Tuesday, July 18th. As I go through each day and I look at all news events and I aggregate them and try to give you a sense of what's going on, I'm looking for a big pattern or theme. Today is not military, today is more political or trying to understand how different sides view the same things. And I'm going to talk about why I don't trust Russia more than just about anything else. And I know the Russian trolls are going to want to drop off or they're going to want to say things or whatever. That's okay. Um, I want to start with yesterday. Yesterday, Zelensky had to dismiss the head of the SBU, that's the Internal Security Service, and the head of the prosecutor general, because of more than 60 employees from the prosecutor's office and the security service that had been working with the Russians. Okay, so that was in the news. So there was a article following that about how they weren't dismissed outright, they were suspended, but Zelensky already has his replacements, waiting in the wings. So I don't know that that's all that important. The defense minister Shogu says he's going to prioritize Russia's long-term weapons. So out of one side of their mouth, the Russians say these HIMARS aren't having an effect, and on the other, they're prioritizing the destruction of long-range weapons. Why? Because they're having an effect. So it's just fascinating to watch. A Russian court finds Google 370 million over fake coverage of Ukrainian invasion. Well, what does fake coverage mean? It means anything that deviates from the official Russian policy or party line. And that party line says this is a special operation. It is not a war. Russia is winning. And so let's look at this. A court in Moscow has ordered Google to pay a fine of 21.77 billion rubles, that's $373 million. It says Google systematically failed to delete as instructed what authorities had determined was banned content. It was a second conviction for Google. In the first, they paid 188,500. And that was for the first fine. YouTube turned one of the key platforms spreading fake news about the war. So yeah, it's fake news if they don't agree with what the official Russian party line is. It is also forbidden describing what several Western governments have called an unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine, which is exactly what it was. And it must be called a special military operation. So we will command your language. As Jordan Peterson pointed out, if I can control your language, I can control your thought. That is why people want to control language. Okay, and so that's the nature of that article. So that's fun. Let's go on. Ukraine's foreign legion was struck by missiles in Russia. Okay, I point this out because I saw an article a couple days ago that was talking about we wiped out 350 of the enemy. Couldn't find anything in Western press. We destroyed 1,000 of the Western, or sorry, of the Ukrainian fighters, and I couldn't find anything in the Ukrainian or Western press documenting it. And so we get this daily dose from RT. Now, why is this important? Because RT, Russian television, is state-sponsored media, and if you're in Russia and you're just seeing victory after victory after victory, you're thinking, oh, okay, maybe it's going all right. A facility used by Ukraine's Foreign Legion in Donbass has been targeted in Russia missile strike that killed up to 250 mercenaries. Okay, but there's nothing in the Western press that says anything about that, and so if you're watching this, when you see these missile strikes, they kill maybe a couple dozen at a time, and that's sad. And it's usually civilians, but they kill maybe a couple dozen at a time with maybe a few dozen wounded, right? So 25 are killed, 60 are wounded. That's what happens during a normal missile strike. It doesn't kill 250 mercenaries in a single strike, and there's nothing in the Western media that corroborates this. Let's go on. Russian economy. This is again RT. Expected to thrive by year's end, says a Putin aide. Okay, that's improbable. Like, you don't have to have a degree in economics to realize that the sanctions, spending your treasury down in order to try to destroy Ukraine, is not going to help you have a thriving economy. being embargoed from the rest of the world is not going to do this. But okay, the wheels of our economy are building momentum step by step. Lending volumes are increasing and interest rates are falling. Okay, let's say that's true. Russia's key task is to build a sovereign economy, which would be, quote, confident in its abilities, working with any partners, but at the same time does not depend on them and is invulnerable. So, what Russia has had to do is look internally and then look to neighbors that are willing to work with it, like North Korea, Iran. China is a little hesitant. They're trying to kind of thread that needle between the US and Russia. But if you try to build an independent economy that is not trading with others, you profit, you grow by trade, you grow in economics by productivity and free trade. The more you have of both of those, the more your economy is going to grow. In early June, President Vladimir Putin said Russia would not close off its economy despite Ukrainian-related Western sanctions. The president called openness one of the key principles of Russia's new economic policy and said the country had no wish to retreat behind an iron curtain. That's the right approach. But as they are increasingly more of a pariah in the world, it's tricky. Now, Russia is trying to overcome that with the BRICS. So the BRICS are Brazil and Russia and India, China, South Africa, and they've invited Argentina and Iran to the party. So they're trying to create this uh, bipolar world where the G7, the West, or the Europe and America on one side, and then Russia's going to counterbalance. I don't know how successful he's going to be, but if he tries to do things just internally, it's not going to work. And the Russian economy being expected to thrive at year's end, not even the American economy or European economies are expected to thrive by year's end. So this is just a propaganda puff piece. Okay, let's keep going. Sohu, that's a Chinese newspaper. Putin stuns the West with two words. What are those two words? Final warning. Okay, so the Chinese analyst write, in fact, the military assistance provided to Kyiv in the form of weapons and intelligence coupled with unleashed information campaign is tantamount to the West entering the battlefield with 2 feet. However, Putin uttered words that are a signal to the NATO countries not to go too far. And what are they? Clear warning. Well, clear warning, I thought it was final warning, but okay, it's translation. Clear warning. So, yeah, now this is in Pravda, and Pravda is carrying this. And again, if you're Russian and Google cannot carry any information to you because they're getting a $300 million lawsuit because they haven't described things exactly the way that you want to describe them, and you're hearing this, well, you're thinking, wow, everything's rocking and rolling. We're doing fine. The special operation is going exactly as they say. I mean, see all the militants that have been killed? So it's really bad. I mean, there's lots of lies and disinformation here. Okay, let me give you an example of what we're talking about. 4 days ago, we saw this. Russia says a building struck in Vinnytsia. Now, what happened in Vinnytsia was actually that they hit a cultural center and killed civilians. But the Russians didn't say that. The Russians said something very different. Okay, so this is what this looks like. On July 14th, Caliber cruise missiles were launched at the, quote, House of Officers in Vinnytsia, Russian Defense Ministry said. The facility, they say, was hosting a conference of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command with representatives of foreign arms suppliers. The attack resulted in the elimination of participants. Well, they eliminated participants that included like a 4-year-old child. Like that's actually what happened. But there wasn't a military conference. See, what happened was there's this place, and this is it. It's called the House of Officers. Head of Vinnystria's regional military administration appealed to European diplomats with requests to help restore the House of Officers, which was damaged as a result of missile attacks inflicted on Vinnystria. Caliber missiles hit a cultural center, that's the House of Officers, a parking lot nearby. 3 missiles cost the lives of 24 people. See the 24 people as opposed to 250 people? 3 children, including 4-year-old Lysia, and a 7-year-old. Okay, so That's what was actually going on here. And they say we must take into account all possible options for restoring it because it's a cultural center. Okay, so when they say it's a cultural center, this is what they mean. This is the House of Officers. Okay, that's the same building. Let's look at the picture again. That's the building. That's the same building. And Russia says it destroyed the House of Officers. They were having a meeting. They were trying to, talk about importing, weapons from the West. No, it's this. This is the House of Officers. This is the House of this dancing here. This is the House of Officers. It's a cultural center by that name. But Russia lies about it, and then they lie about lying about it. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand here today is that you have to read from both sides. Read Western press, then read Russian press, and compare notes and see what's actually going on. That's my message for you today. It is July 18th, and I hope you come back tomorrow for more insight and analysis.